Springfield's Talk 1041. Welcome. Good Tuesday. My name is Nick Reed. Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line 447 KSGF. If you'd like to text in, you could call in as well. But in this day and age, texting, of course, is the way that most people go. It makes it a little simpler. You don't have to wait on hold to get your comments through. And we see them. We see all of them. So we get a chance to know what it is that you're thinking. Had a great happy hour Friday. That was a great one. Really
Christy
enjoyed it.
Felicki was there.
Yes, she actually made it. So often she thinks she might be able to, but her schedule, things pop up, court cases and so forth. It's the exciting, thrilling life of an attorney, and she did make it, and so I know a lot of you folks that were out there were happy about that, and it was just
it was a great time.
It was a great time, great amount of people that were there. And
we did ticket giveaways. Everybody was happy.
Right. We did do those ticket giveaways, and in fact, if you, whether you came out to register for the ticket giveaways or not, there were a couple of them that we did. Bob Dylan, who is going to be performing his Rough and Rowdy Ways Tour Juanita K Friday, March 28th. You can register to win tickets for that at ksgf.com. And while you're there, go ahead and get registered for the Outlaw Music Festival. Willie Nelson, Bob Dylan also. Nathaniel Ratliff and the Night Sweats, Trampled by Turtles, Tammy Nielsen. I'll fully admit I'm not familiar with some of these, some I am. But that is going to be a Thunder Ridge event on Sunday, June 29th. So you can register to win tickets for that while you are over there at ksgf.com. It would just... this administration, the nonstop working, the nonstop panic, it's like this flood of success and flood of work being done, and you've got the panicked left desperately trying to stop it. They've really got on their hands a real thing here, because not only is it about the political opposition, according to new polling, very, very popular. The thing I love about the polling is it shows like 70% of Americans are saying, he's doing what he said he was going to do. And that is important for a couple of reasons. One, whether it is fair or not, elected officials get the reputation of not doing what they say they're going to do. They make all of these promises. They get elected. Particularly, let's be honest, Republicans have a bad habit of then explaining to you why they can't get it done. Well, you got to understand. You have to vote for us to get us in Congress, because we got to get in Congress to have the purse strings. And then they get in there, well, you got to understand, see, Biden's in the White House, so he won't sign it anyway. He'll just veto it. Well, you got to understand, we don't have quite the power in the Senate that we need. There's always some you have to understand excuse. And so people just, they grow very frustrated, and they get to the point where they tune out the promises. And so the fact that Trump is polling so significantly in that context that, he's doing what he said he was going to do. It's significant for that reason. Secondly, the Democrats obviously are trying to portray the things that he is doing as being awful and horrible. But people voted for him. And given that the people who voted for him are saying, no, this is what he said he was going to do, then it's lost. It is continuing to demonstrate that the Democrats either aren't listening or they don't care to listen about what it is that Trump is doing. It would be a different scenario if you had things flipped upside down and 70% of Americans are like, what's he doing? This is the opposite of what he said he was going to do. And then the Democrats were screaming along with them. See, right now they're screaming at them. They're screaming at you. They're screaming at your neighbors. And this is essentially a shame on you is what it is by default. Now, they don't mean for it to be that way, but the majority of people that they're screaming at about how horrible finding all of this money that was being spent, the whole Doge thing is really what has them in a tizzy right now. And this is what people want. When they continue to find out on a daily basis how some of this money is being used, what it's going to, and then listening to Democrats try and defend it. It's like, what do you not understand about the audience? Read the room. You got to read the room a bit. Now, it's all great news for Trump, and it's great news for Americans who want to continue to see these things done because you know, the opposition to all of this is screaming into the wind. And they have an extreme minority of people that are on their side. And those are people that are not normal people. These are the extremists that are going to, the Trump derangement syndrome types. There's a story, incidentally, and it's not an isolated story, yet another one, I think in Mediaite, about how a lot of psychiatrists and psychologists, of course, they have been seeing Democrats who are experiencing 9/11-like trauma because of the Trump election. Now, the only difference is, or I shouldn't say the only difference, but the big difference is 9/11 was a really horrible, awful, tragic, catastrophic thing that actually occurred with real results that were really, really awful and bad, as opposed to these people that are suffering these mental breakdowns because Trump is president, in which they can't really even point to anything bad that he's done. Certainly not on the level of 9/11. It is all rumor, it's speculation, or it's about the things that he's, quote, going to do, or they will pitch a fit. They get themselves in this frenzy over things that are commonplace. Oh, he's got unelected people doing this stuff. What do you think Biden had? What do you think Obama had? What do you think Bush had? What do you think had Clinton? I mean, they all are surrounded by unelected people. This is not new. This is how things function. And so they create this make-believe world in which they create fear itself. And like moths to a light, they seem to be drawn towards it. Weather in a moment. Right now, the latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Color 10 Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements. A winter weather advisory is in effect for the entire listening area until noon on Wednesday. Today we'll see a chance of snow and freezing drizzle throughout the day. Little accumulation is to be expected. We'll see a high near 34. Tonight, freezing rain and patchy fog with a low around 32. For your Wednesday, freezing rain, sleet, and snow are possible with a high near 35. And on Thursday, mostly sunny with a high near 30.
Trump says Israel should let all hell break loose if Hamas does not release all hostages by Saturday. Seemingly, it seems to me as if this was, I don't want to say spitballing a deadline, but on the spot was like, noon on Saturday. Here are his comments regarding because what's happening here. Well, we'll explain after the comment.
Well, I would say this, and I'm going to let that be because that's Israel's decision. But as far as I'm concerned, if all of the hostages aren't returned by Saturday at 12 o'clock, I think it's an appropriate time. I would say cancel it and all bets are off and let hell break out. I'd say they ought to be returned by 12 o'clock on Saturday. And if they're not returned, all of them, not in drips and drabs, not 2 and 1 and 3 and 4 and 2. Saturday at 12 o'clock. And after that, I would say all hell is going to break out.
Now, this is in response to what he clearly expected was a distinct possibility, and that is that they're going to test these waters as best as possible, that you're going to, just like any spoiled child that has a new adult in their life and they're put on notice, they're going to test it just to see how based in reality the promises are, the threats are, and the deal that was worked out prior to Trump, that was not a great deal, and something that the Trump camp certainly themselves would not have worked out to the way that it was, but it was in place and there was an agreement. So this is where Trump was like, full blown, just put them on notice. We're going to come after you and destroy you. And so we'll comply with this. Well, a couple hostages here, they're trying to maintain control of the situation. And what Trump recognizes is that you cannot let them control the situation. They've been controlling the situation all this time, and it has brought nothing but death, destruction, terrorist attacks, despair, a horrific quality of life for the people that they claim they're supporting and defending. Nobody wins. No one wins. And so right now, you have a situation where Hamas is essentially back in control in the sense that they are releasing these hostages in a way for the purpose of control. Just, all right, we'll decide when we'll release 2 here, 1 here, drag it out. And this is common MO for terrorist organizations when it comes to any potential hostage release. And so Trump did, of course, he said ultimately it's up to Israel, but this is what I would do. And that's a deadline. You have to set a deadline for this stuff. This is something that somebody who is in a real leadership position understands. If you want an avenue that leads to an end goal, you have to have a timeline. You cannot have these open-ended situations because when you're in an adversarial position, if there's no deadline, then there's no point on the map in which the opposition says, okay, well, if we don't do it by this point here, then we know what's going to happen. And with Trump, I think they lean towards believing him. Now, again, he's essentially letting Hamas know that if Israel does decide to do this, they have the backing of the United States, which is also a signal to them that this is not the Biden administration. The Biden administration isn't going to go crying to the cameras whenever Israel does something meaningful in terms of taking out some of these terrorists. And they're not going to accuse Netanyahu of war crimes and talk about, the atrocities. And if you notice, the United States no longer uses the propaganda numbers from Hamas. The talking points that Hamas would put out in terms of the number that they claimed of innocent that were killed by the evil Israelis, those became the talking points of the White House. That's all done and over with. As is the non-backing of Israel to just go in and eliminate, and this is what Netanyahu has stated. It has to be done. I mean, Hamas has to completely go away, and then you throw in there, of course, the announcement by Trump that Gaza is going to be something completely and totally different that will not accommodate terrorist organizations. We're talking about something that, frankly, no one has ever even really talked about before. And incidentally, I love how somehow this is a bad thing. You really realize when Trump has come out and he's talked about making this just a wonderful, beautiful place, high quality of life, the sort of place people will want to come to visit, and the people who claim that they care most about the people in that region suddenly, at that moment, are opposed to it, as if these are people who deserve to live in squalor, who deserve to be under the thumb of terrorist organizations, who deserve to live in third world conditions, when it is completely and totally unnecessary, but exists only because of the people that are ruling over them. And the fact that as a world, the concept of that area one day being just a normal place to live and a normal place to visit is so incomprehensible. People act like Trump is crazy for suggesting it. But this outside the box thinking of go in, eliminate him, and we're going to rebuild this thing from the ground up. We're going to make it this wonderful place. While it seems unreasonable to a lot of people, that is what successful people do. They oftentimes put out ideas and thoughts that many people think are unreasonable. And in context, relatively speaking, oftentimes they are. It was unreasonable for Trump to, depending on your interpretation of the definition, to believe that he'd ever be president of the United States. Like, what, is he out of his mind? That's not a reasonable expectation, but he made it happen. Americans, now, if you set aside who should be financially responsible, what this actually means in terms of our connection, some people see it as the nation-building component, which they don't like. But if you set that aside, the biggest obstacle for a lot of people is just, well, that can never happen. But we are a country that once upon a time was populated by people that said things like, we can fly, or we can go to the moon. Things that were considered to be unreasonable expectations by the majority of people. Well, that could never happen. You get a small segment of the population that gets very excited about it because they're dreamers. But as a country, that's where we were once upon a. That's who we were. That is why we advanced so quickly and so at such an accelerated rate compared to so many other countries since the beginning of time, because that was our culture, that was our mindset. And I, frankly, kind of like to see some of that again. So I like the idea that here is a president of the United States that can throw out an idea that I think even his most staunch supporters go, well, wait a minute, what? Well, that's out of left field. But isn't that why I got elected? Springfield's Talk 1041, I'm Nick Reed. I want to read to you the following that Netanyahu said in an interview regarding the majority of people that are critics of Trump's plans for Gaza. And he said, quote, "I think President Trump's vision is the first original idea to solve this problem once and for all." And that's true. He went on to say, "Everybody who knocks it down is doing it first on false premises. The president never said that he had to send American soldiers to finish off Hamas. We're going to do that. Nobody else has to do it. Secondly, he did not say he would invest American government money on it because he thinks there will be enough support from countries in the Middle East and probably business sources too. Third, he did not talk about forced eviction, but what he's talking about is giving Gazans a choice. They can live in this demolition dump where they've been indoctrinated all the time to go and fight and destroy Israel, or they can have an option for a better life with being relocated and having Gaza cleared up and the demolition of thousands and thousands of unexploded bombs. What's wrong with that? It's a compelling vision to solve the problem when nothing else has worked." And people can argue that they don't believe that this will work, but what you can't argue is what has been done up until now has. But as usual, the approach of world leaders and the elites, and this is human nature to some degree for some people, is you just keep doing the same thing over and over again. And I would remind you, though it doesn't mean that 10 years from now there are going to be amusement parks in that part of the world, but as difficult as it may be to wrap our minds around that part of the world no longer being a place of terrorism, that mindset is the same mindset that most people had when it came to the idea of the Abraham Accords. I know I've quoted them quite often, but former Secretary of State John Kerry was very specific in saying that will never, ever, ever happen. Everyone knows you will never get individual countries in the Middle East to sign unilateral agreements with Israel. That will never happen, and everyone knows it. But Trump made it happen. And I think that it's important to remember. See, now we forget how incomprehensible that was, how unreasonable that expectation was, because it happened. And when things come to be, we oftentimes lose sight of what we thought about the idea beforehand and how we felt, largely, most people thought, well, it'll never happen. I must admit, though I recognize that Trump is different than most world leaders, I as an adult, my entire life, as many of you are, we'll get peace in the Middle East, peace. And it's never going to happen. It is never going to happen. Trump began the process meaningfully. And if Trump can get the Abraham Accords, then I don't think it is out of the reach of possibilities that what he envisions for Gaza comes to be as well. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. She really likes that orange sweatshirt. Yeah. This is when you do weather. This is the part of the show where you do weather.
Stop it. I got caught up in what you were talking about. I don't know where we are. Springfield Stock 1041, your first alert forecast from Colorton, Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals. A winter weather advisory is in effect for the entire listening area until noon on Wednesday. Today, a chance of snow and freezing drizzle throughout the day. Little accumulation is to be expected, though, with a high near 34. Tonight, freezing rain and patchy fog with a low around 32. For your Wednesday, freezing rain, sleet, and snow are possible with a high near 35. And on Thursday, mostly sunny with a high near 30.
President Trump yesterday said he would consider withholding military aid to Egypt and Jordan if they refuse to take in Palestinian refugees as part of his plan to rebuild the Gaza Strip. He announced, of course, last week that whole Gaza plan. He declined to commit to withholding aid when asked during a gaggle at the White House whether he would withhold aid from the Middle Eastern countries if they do not take in Palestinians, but said it was a conceivable option. Both are top recipients of U.S. military funding. Trump responded when asked, yeah, maybe, sure, why not? If they don't agree, I would conceivably withhold aid, yeah. The response came after the U.S. promised in 2022 to provide Jordan with more than $1 billion annually in foreign assistance as part of a memorandum the U.S. and Jordan signed. The U.S. also gave Egypt $1.5 billion in fiscal year 2023, according to The Hill, both under the Biden administration. The comments also come ahead of Trump's planned meeting with King Abdullah II of Jordan, which is slated for today, to discuss his potential plan with Gaza. Now, what this exposes is the attitude that the elites have when it comes to our money, and their instinct that that money naturally belongs to other people, and if we don't provide it for whatever reason, somehow we are doing something wrong. Like we're taking money away from them. We're going to take money away. No, that's not that. We've got to change that mindset. And I tell you, I think Doge is really helping this because people are seeing not only the ways that our dollars are being spent, but the mentality of the people who want to keep spending it as if we're the bad guys because we, at the very least, want to know where our money is going. We don't like it going in a number of areas, particularly those we find out it's going to terrorists. We find out it's going to these different organizations that are against the United States interest. But then when we're like, maybe my money shouldn't go to that. Maybe I shouldn't have to work until almost the end of April just to cover all of the taxes that the government takes away from me. And then the pushback that they see, and acting as if the people who are for the very first time unveiling this information for us are the bad guys. Think about that mindset for a moment as we learn. In fact, there was another story. I mean, there's stories all over about what these dollars are going to. And there was, I think it was Hamas in Lebanon. Israeli forces found some interesting items in a seized Hezbollah weapons cache. Yeah, it would be Hezbollah. It's Lebanon. And it was USAID packages. So to, I think, a much more normalized degree, have been funding terrorism for some time, just secretly. We know that we have funded terrorism through the Biden administration by giving the Taliban, its own country and military and billions of dollars of cash. And then funded terrorism by, under the Biden administration, opening up the financial spigots to Iran, that they would use those dollars in order to fund the attack on Israel on October 7th. But there's, I think, for a lot of people, something different because you can sort of, some people rationalize, well, we didn't know Iran was going to do that, or, well, we had to get out of Afghanistan. But when you find that there are these dollars that some unelected person maybe is diverting specifically to terrorists that are on the ground and giving them aid, some people, have a problem with giving aid and comfort to our enemy. But that's what you and I, as tax dollars, we're finding out, have been forced to do. And who is the target? It would be nice if, and this has become partisan, I believe, to the detriment of the Democrat Party, but they've chosen this. They have chosen to be the party to defend this. When you hear their outrage hear all the horrible things they say about Elon Musk, compared to the people who are taking our money that are terrorists, where they don't say anything? I mean, that should be a major clue to us. When it comes to which side one of the two major political parties and the media is falling on, it isn't the side of the people who are letting the taxpayers understand what is happening with their dollars. It's not on the side of transparency. Those are the people they're attacking, while defending that money going to, among other things, terrorist organizations. I oftentimes find myself saying, if you had told me 10 years ago, but if you had told me 10 years ago that you'd have the Democrat Party defending the funneling of money in darkness to terrorist organizations, and then we've gotten to the point now, encouraging acts of violence against those who are revealing all of this information to us, I think I would have had a hard time believing that the Democrat Party would fall that far. However, this is where we are. Springfield's Talk 1041. I'm Nick Reed. Elon Musk reporting yesterday FEMA sent $59 million just last week to luxury hotels in New York City to house illegal immigrants. According to Musk, sending the money to these high-end hotels violated the law, directly interfering with President Trump's executive order. There's a separate story from this, though it does dovetail about I think it's in the New York Post, on the sergeant level in law enforcement in New York. They are fleeing New York, and it's a combination of reasons. One, because of the goofy pay structure that exists there. The cap on how much a sergeant can make is lower than what a street cop can make after a period of time. And so you have these people that are sergeants within the NYPD and people that are below them that they have charge of actually make more money than they do. And then at the same time, they see, because, I'm sure they're constantly faced with, well, budget, but then they watch millions and millions and millions of dollars going in order to actually encourage crime, to give luxury housing to people who are in this country illegally. I mentioned earlier that Israeli forces, and there's photos of this, of course, they went through an area of where Hezbollah was housed, and they found all over the place USAID stuff, packages to give them aid and comfort. The Department of Health and Human Services, just throwing you some of the latest Doge stuff, canceled more than $180 million in contracts over 48 hours, good news, including a nearly $170,000 contract for an Anthony Fauci Museum exhibit. Not a museum, but an exhibit, $170,000. All of this, understand. If you, as a taxpayer, say, you know what, maybe we shouldn't, maybe not, you're the bad guy. There's, let's see here if I've got time, I believe, to read. Yes. Brett Bellier in The Federalist has a piece, media should investigate federal waste, not the people finding it. The avalanche of wasteful spending uncovered by the Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, is a mere hint of deeper secrets lurking within funky federal funding. Even a Cub reporter knows the juiciest news is uncovered when you follow the money. But that's not what the legacy media is looking at. DOGE is highlighting spending information that is ripe for investigative reporting. A lot of this information has been readily available on the government spending website, usaspending.gov, which was spurred to life in 2006, in part through the effort of Federalist CEO and co-founder Sean Davis. The corporate media have had years to tell the public the extent of government glut. But why would they when they are on the take themselves, enjoying fat government handouts? As Federalist writer Logan Washburn recently reported, the federal government, taxpayers, has paid Politico $34.3 million since 2015, Reuters $10.6 million since 2020, the New York Times $2.7 million since 2008, and $1.7 million to the Washington Post since 2014. It is a conflict of interest for the media to receive money from the same government it is ostensibly covering. It's hard to imagine a heavy-hitting investigation challenging spending, such as $8 million to teach Sri Lankan journalists how to avoid binary gendered language, as Federalist writer Tristan Justice recently reported. Now, there is good news. The lazy media have a newfound curiosity. The bad news is that traditional media have turned their attention to the people investigating the federal funding. Instead of following the money, the left-wing media complex is following the money followers. Wired Global editorial director Katie Drummond spoke with CNN host Aaron Burnett about Wired magazine's riveting investigation into Edward Korenstein, a 19-year-old hired for computer work at Doge. Quote, Korenstein's online history, including a LinkedIn account where he calls himself Big Balls, has disappeared recently, Wired reported, adding it is questionable if Korenstein could get a security clearance to work in the government. Oh, and he also started a business named Tesla.Sexy LLC when he was 16. The horror. Bad taste, sure, but no laws were broken. There was a time when some gritty editor with a coffee-stained tie would reject a reporter's pitch like this. Nice try, kid, he'd say, but it's not news. Go get me something people care about. But the standards are different now. An editorial team probably sent reporters fishing at Doge's door, not on the inner workings of government spending, but on the people investigating it. Get me some dirt, but all they could find was a team of younger-than-dirt Doge workers. Some Doge employees are age 25 and under. The corporate media have packaged this as a deep concern using disparaging phrases like inexperienced, barely out of college, nerd army, and baby Doge minions. To people who have not yet moved out of their mom's basement, it may be shocking to see gainfully employed young people in powerful positions. But this cohort can handle the task, and unlike aging members of Congress nearing death, these young people have a dog in the fight. They are the ones who are going to have to live with the financial decisions the nation makes right now. Note also that you can enlist in the Marines at 17. As usual, the corporate media are missing the target. Again, follow the money, not the people investigating the money. Remember the $8 million spent on Sri Lankan journalists? This is a news tip, and it is practically slapping the media in the face. The same goes for all of the eyebrow-raising Doge findings. Funding is just the surface of the story. If the budget line item seems odd, corruption could be involved. The media should be asking questions. Who advocated for this funding? Why? Which journalists were trained? How many? What were they taught specifically? If this project connected to other contracts, which people are behind the spending? Are they connected to lawmakers or high-level government officials? If so, what other contracts are they connected to? What were the salaries of the people who received the contract? Did the work even get done? What was the result? These questions are just a starting point. It would take time, records request, interviews, and maybe a trip to the work site to get the answers. Meh, it's so much easier for government-funded media to smear the investigators and try to keep the funding streams flowing. That again, the Federalist, we'll get that posted at ksgf.com. I'm going to get a traffic update more ahead. I'm Nick Reed. Regarding the wave of attack by the media on the success thus far of exposing so much of this money of ours that is being just spread around to all of these different areas. And that is, well, look, they're like 21, 22 years old. Like every other person and every other cause, the left uses them. They can either be for them or against them, depending on the cause. If the cause is global warming, Greta Thunberg is inspiring because she's so young and she gets it. Oh, we hear the conversation about how, sometimes adults just get so cynical about things and so bogged down in the bureaucracy and the details. It takes a young person who hasn't yet been tainted by such a culture to really speak through, and we can learn so much from them. We've talked this week about David Hogg being elected the vice chair of the Democratic National Committee. The left loves to talk about young people and how we should listen to them if they're 10 and think that they're trapped in the wrong body and need some sort of sex change operation. But if it's somebody that is a young, brilliant computer whiz mind that is able to forensically go through these different spreadsheets and learn where dollars are going and revealing that to the American people, all of a sudden these are just young kids that shouldn't be listened to. After October 7th, there were a number of Democrat members of Congress, including the White House, that at times were essentially held politically hostage by young interns and staffers demanding that they be heard when it came to their position on what was going on in the Middle East. And the administration would have sessions catering to those young people because we need to listen to them. But like everything else, and everyone else, they are only tools to be used. And so now the young, inspiring voices of the future are reckless individuals that have disturbing online email addresses and should not be trusted. But of course, got some J6ers coming up in the next hour. Oh, yes. News in 60 seconds. I'm Nick Reed. Springfield's Talk 1041. I'm Nick Reed, Wilder RV, Clinton, Missouri. Just a little bit over an hour north of Springfield on 13 for all of your RV needs. Whether that is getting her prep for springtime, get ahead of the curve. You don't want to wait in line that first, official or unofficial kickoff of summer. And, it's a week or two before and you think, oh, I had a little bit of a leaky roof and needed this fixed and that taken care of. But it's going to be 2 or 3 weeks because everyone is waiting until that moment in time. Do it now. And maybe it's a great time to upgrade or downgrade. You got the kids moving out, and you don't necessarily need as much room in that RV. They can take care of those accommodations as well. Clinton, Missouri on 13, just north of Springfield. A bit over an hour, Wilder RV. They got a great website as well, wilderrv.com. We're going to have some return guests coming up here in a moment. You have met them before, though it was prior to their pardons. We'll chat with those fellas coming up here in just a couple of moments. Right now, the latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Color 10 Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals. A winter weather advisory is in effect for the entire listening area until noon on Wednesday. Today we'll see a chance of snow and freezing drizzle throughout the day. Little accumulation is to be expected. We'll see a high near 34. Tonight, freezing rain and patchy fog with a low around 32. For your Wednesday, freezing rain, sleet, and snow are possible with a high near 35. And for your Thursday, mostly sunny with a high near 30.
Springfield's Talk 1041. I'm Nick Reed. Of course, one of the promises that was made by President Trump is of course, evaluating and then what would be the pardoning of so many of those that are known as J6ers. And we have 3 in studio. We've had all 3 of you in the past. All 3 of you were here, right? Once before.
Yeah, that's right.
But however, things are a little bit different now. I think you probably feel like you can maybe not have to watch what you say so much as you did before.
Right.
So if you would remind us, we got Steve, Mike, and Zach here in studio with us. like what happened on January 6th? We'll start with that with all of you and what your mindset was, what was going on at the time, and then we'll talk about sort of that evolution in which you realize that you're being hunted down by the government. And I'll let any of you start. We'll just have,
You start, Steve.
I don't know. It seemed like on our way to the Capitol, we knew history was being made.
and why were you going to the Capitol?
We had to rescue our friend that ended up down at the Capitol.
Got it.
We had no plans of going to the Capitol that day.
So when you say rescue your friend, what, you were in communication with this person? And,
Yeah, she got separated from us at
Okay,
the rally.
got it.
She had to pee.
Okay. It's,
And
hey,
then
it
she-
happens.
and then she was
Well,
fine.
do you know, I actually remember, now that you mention that, hearing that,
Yeah.
which was seen as deliberate. I think it was the Park Service wouldn't put
Yeah, there
like
was only,
outhouses
like,
or so, or not
7
outhouses,
Yeah.
porta potties, I guess, out at that whole huge rally.
Maybe 7 to 10 of
Yeah,
them.
I know
Yeah.
what
Yeah,
that
the
goes.
line for the porta potty was
Blocks.
So you get the mic closer to you if you don't mind. Yeah, you
1,000
can pull it to
people.
you if you need to.
Yeah.
All right, so she heads over there, and then she's separated from you all, so you head over there in order to get back, together. And then what happens?
We just got curious and got closer to the Capitol. It's like we didn't see the violence, I guess everybody was seeing.
She was there. She
Mm-hmm.
saw, and she was like, "You guys, you have to check this out. You have to at least see what's going on." So, so she kind of led us up to it.
Well, and one of the interesting things in retrospect, and because I knew some people that had gone up to go to the speech, and I was watching on television what was unfolding. So I had texted her, just, hey, this where they're covering, this is kind of crazy. And it wasn't until quite a bit later she actually had texted back, because there was such an overload of people trying to use cell phones that texts weren't going through.
Right.
But she didn't even know any of that stuff was going on. And I thought that was interesting, and for you to note that as well, because of course the way that the media portrays it, it was this whole group that's like, come on, let's all go storm the Capitol, and you all went over there to do it, when a majority of people, they didn't even know what the heck was going on.
I didn't know what was going on.
If
Well-
I'm not mistaken, the breach at the Capitol with Ray Epps was happening while the speech was still going on.
Yeah.
I believe that is the timeline.
So
there.
there's no way. I can't get my head around how everybody's trying to blame Trump for people going to the Capitol.
Yeah.
I mean, because the thing was already happening. I mean,
Right.
he was
Yeah,
still
the
speaking.
tear gas was being shot before Trump was even done speaking.
You mentioned Ray Epps. I know a lot of our listeners know that name. This is the mysterious individual that was at one point, I think, the top 10. We got to find this guy. Then he just disappears off the government website, and videos pop up of him clearly, even the day before,
Right.
telling people we need to go in there even if we get arrested. And they're calling him out as being a Fed. I remember in one of the videos,
Yeah.
they're like,
Fed.
you clearly are a Fed. This is too obvious. And the government, they found one so-called J6er all of a sudden that they were very defensive of, and now this guy didn't do anything wrong. And so it's long been believed, just based off of his behavior and the way that the government has reacted about him, that he was there to instigate things.
Yeah, and the state media even defended him also. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
They went.
They found the
fought for
one
him.
January 6th person that they, a guy who actually was doing what they claimed all J6ers were doing, and that was
Right.
inciting a riot, and he was doing that.
Correct. And there's even a guy called Scaffolding Commander. He was a guy on top of the scaffolding, directing people. They were using flags, all kinds of signals to direct people. You don't hear a word about this guy.
Now, you all, well, okay, so let's go to then when you realize. So you're there, and you went in the Capitol for like 10, 15 minutes, right? What
Right.
did all three of you do that?
All four of us.
All four of you again?
Well, actually, there was a fifth, but
Okay.
the FBI never asked us about him.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It's a
Very.
fellow we met
Yeah,
at the
he was-
subway
yeah.
on the way in. He was all by himself, and we invited him to tag along with us. And
He was
there's
with
not
us
been
the
any
whole time.
questions or anything about this guy. Then you hear reports about undercover Metro PD and
Yeah.
all these things, and you just kind of scratch your head a little bit.
Yeah. All right. So you get back. When, and I'm sure it may be different and two of you are brothers, we should note here.
Right.
The experiences may be different for all of you, but when was it, and what was it like when you start to realize, wait, they're going to like maybe come track us down?
Probably within a few minutes after being inside the Capitol.
Okay. So what was it that just because of what you're looking
Well,
around, you're like,
there was people all over the place with real fancy cameras squatting
Okay.
down in corners, and it was just real weird.
Like the professional photographers were already there, if that makes any sense. Like,
Right.
they were already there taking pictures. Hey guys, stand together in a group so we can take a picture and things like this.
did that seem weird at the time, or is it in retrospect when we start to kind of learn information?
It was definitely weird at the time, but as more time went on, it really, it just escalated.
Yeah, it got worse. Yeah, I think our biggest moment was when we were on our way back, and we were just all like, "Oh."
We didn't
man.
know any of the
We
violence had happened until we saw it when we got back to the hotel later that
Okay.
night. Like, we weren't even aware of anything. When I saw it on the news when we got to the hotel, that's when I kind of knew, okay, this is going the wrong way pretty bad.
It's surreal for the three of you, I would imagine, anyhow, because the way that it's portrayed on the media, everyone that was there, like this was one monolithic storming of the Capitol, and so they present this imagery that a person can easily watch and infer that everyone there was part of this. And so for you and others, have talked about that it wasn't even until you were gone that you even knew any of that stuff was happening.
Right.
Correct.
So people were you just sort of like milling around, and I know we've seen a lot of footage of that, so I imagine that was what you were part of.
Yeah, realistically, it was a tour group, like a museum visit. I mean, there's a lot of cool statues and pictures and
Yeah.
things in the building, and most of the people were just kind of in awe looking at those things. I mean,
Okay, then at what was it that occurred to where you all left the Capitol?
there was nothing to see there. There was nobody
Right.
to shake our fist at. We
So,
went inside to look
nothing's
around.
going on and-
Mostly curiosity. Yeah,
Yeah.
we walked around and
we were there to protect the Capitol. If we would have saw somebody breaking something,
There was a lot of video
or
of that too.
something like that, we would have at least asked authority, or we were there to protect the Capitol, which is one of the main things that our attorney asked. He's like, just don't say anything, because they hated that. Like the prosecutor, she hated
Yeah.
it when I was like, look, I was there to protect the Capitol.
Well, and you didn't see a lot of it, but it was out there, video of people doing just that were hollering at law enforcement saying, what are you guys doing? Why are you letting this happen? It's when you are able to have access to or find some of those videos, you realize how upside down the reality was compared to what actually was occurring.
yeah, it's like most of the story was completely ignored. Focused on the ones that were breaking windows and things like that, which we're very curious about because it doesn't seem like very many of them were ever arrested or held accountable to this
They
day.
wanted us to be violent,
Exactly.
and that whole plan failed for them. So they had to move on to other tactics, I guess. But they wanted us to show up and actually be violent and
Yeah,
cause
they wanted a
violence, and
bloodbath.
we, that was the opposite of 99.9%
Right.
of the people that were there. I mean, there were a couple people that, probably just got taken away by the moment, and
Sure.
and the scaffolding guy, he probably got to some people and got them a little
Right.
too fired up, but
So before we take a break and continue on here, it's what I'm getting from all this is that as a person who was in the Capitol while this was going on, you probably do not think of it as being on the same level as someone who was in the Twin Towers on 9/11, because of course that's what we've consistently heard.
Oh no, we're
that-
way worse.
that this whole experience was that what you all were experiencing was worse than what the people in the Twin Towers or the Pentagon or anywhere else dealt with on 9/11. I mean, that's not a ludicrous statement, is it?
No, that sounds
yeah, we
about
were more
right.
like the people in Building 7.
Yeah. Yes. I wondered. We'll have more coming up here. And what I want to talk about next is how it was that the arrest occurred, that part of it, and then just what the experience has been like, and then the partying, and what you all think about how things are going currently with the first 3 weeks of the Trump administration. We got Stephen, Mike, and Zach with us all there in the Capitol on January 6th, and received their part 2 of. I actually have the certificates here, the print-offs of certificates. You'll get official ones at some point. Is that right?
Yes.
All right. What do you do with them? It's such a weird thing.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, like it is. Well, it's historic. There's
Right.
no doubt about that. They are historic documents. More coming up. Springfield's Talk 1041. I'm Nick Reed. Stephen and Mike Quick, Zach Martin in studio with us, recently pardoned by President Donald Trump. I'd like to just get your one, all, however you all want to do it. Like when you first thought, man, we may really they're really going to come after us, and how all that came to be.
Yeah, like Zach was saying, when we were coming back from D.C., we were pretty worried. And I had got a hold of D. Wampler within days of being back.
Now, was it you at the Yard Waste Recycling Center? Who? What? Didn't
was
somebody
Zach.
that was you or at the yard? I remember
was
that
me.
story because that's how we all met. Friends with D, and
Yeah.
we had lunch together, and I remember that story. You were at on Lone Pine, right? The Yard
Yep,
Waste
yep.
Recycling, and like SWAT comes in. What was that
Recycling.
experience like?
Well, I'd been kind of hiding out for a couple weeks, and I'd finally got my attorney, and I was heading to the bank to get the check, and I'd stayed at the night with a friend of mine, and so on my way in, I decided to take her recycling and drop it off just for letting me stay, and so I was just there at the recycling center. I'd put my Sims card back in my phone, and I was listening to my And We Know podcast, and yeah, I got done recycling, and here comes I see a actual police, Springfield police pulling in, and then I'm like, oh boy. So I put her in gear, and I'm getting ready to go, and this unmarked car pulls in front of me and stops, and they get out, and they're like, you were at the Capitol. And I was like, yeah, I was at the Capitol. And I had my Trump hat on and everything, and they just pulled in, and that wasn't the FBI. They said, okay, well, we're just gonna have to wait till the FBI gets here. And so I just stood there and
They
waited.
must have been trailing you, I would imagine.
Well, they tracked me with my phone. You know how they
Oh.
can't do that.
Right, until they can.
Yeah. So they hadn't been able to track me until I put my Sims card back in my phone.
Oh,
And
man, it's stuff like that. I mean,
yeah,
that they talk like they don't track you.
Right.
You like how they're so quickly able to do that. You just put that thing right, and it is
Yeah.
something from a movie.
yeah.
Where you
Yeah.
when you watch the movie, you think, well, it doesn't really work like that. I guess in some instances it does. If the government wants to get you badly enough, which yeah, I mean not to get off track here, but we spent 4 years here, and there's no way we can
Right.
find all these illegals, and yeah, but
There's
man,
no
they
way we
sure
can
find
track
you
ballot
quickly.
mules.
track these votes
right,
with
yeah,
their cell phones.
exactly. How long was it from January 6th until for each of you the an arrest?
I think we talked to the FBI right after Biden got in office. I think it was January 20th, right,
Okay.
right around that time.
Now, was the experience the same for you two? Was it a swarm in arrest, or
Well,
was
the
it?
FBI came to my house and they were asking me questions about Zach. You know,
Yeah,
did
they
you
just
know
wanted
Zach
about me.
Martin was at the Capitol? And I was like, yes. They're like, was he violent at the Capitol? And I said, no. And, you know, that's all they were concerned about with
Right.
violence. Just, even with the J6 committee, when we talked to them, the subcommittee, the prosecuting attorney, everybody was so focused on violence and racism. And
Yeah, asking if we were part of
Yeah.
this group or know that group, and I'd never even heard of half of them. Like
Right.
I hadn't heard of the Oath Keepers at the time.
Was there some point, whether it was FBI or the J6 committee, that you thought, man, they're looking to make this something that it wasn't? Or was there some point that revelation occurred?
pretty much the whole time.
Yeah.
Immediately, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we knew as soon as we got to the Capitol that that's what was. I mean, this was all set. It was a set up.
I imagine that there's probably been ups and downs in terms of your perspectives on this. I would imagine it's,
Yeah,
there's a
you
good.
know, I wouldn't want anybody to live through this. I mean, to go through it. It hasn't been fun.
Do you, I mean, look at it somewhat differently now that Trump is, of course, he got reelected, and then the pardonings. I imagine there was probably a quote low point for all of you when you're just like, oh my gosh, can this get any worse?
Right.
Yeah, that was probably, I mean, for our trial, what was it, a year and a half? I mean, we all had to go together. We weren't able to individually, like, we wanted to plead not guilty or anything. We couldn't do it. It had to be a group thing. What one did, we all had to do, which was, to my understanding at the time, that was unheard of. You don't do that.
Right.
It's denial of due process.
Yeah.
Many stories like that from J6 communities that we've been talking to, due process been denied over and over again just because they got to get their guy.
How did Dee's death affect the process?
Oh man, it got real scary then for me.
Yeah, that was what, a month and a half out from our final court
Okay.
date. So I mean, yeah, we were right up against it, and yeah, it wasn't it didn't make it easy. I'll say that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and nothing against Passanisi and Taylor.
Well, sure.
Yeah, they
but
took
it's-
over pretty well. I mean,
But
you know,
obviously they weren't there the whole time, and you got some catch up.
But yeah, Joe and Dee work really well
Yeah.
together. And, you know, we lost one of them.
I want to get a traffic update and get some weather, and then ask, well, what the punishment was. How did that all play out? And then the election, and your thoughts through that. Oh my gosh, he may get elected. Just how I can't even imagine, given what was on the line for you all during that period of time, just that thought process. So we'll have that coming up next. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed.
Springfield's Talk 1041, your first alert forecast from Colorton, Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair the Ozarks Home Improvements. A winter weather advisory is in effect for the entire listening area until noon Wednesday. Today, a chance of snow and freezing drizzle throughout the day, high near 34. Tonight, freezing rain and patchy fog with a low around 32. For your Wednesday, freezing rain, sleet, and snow are possible with a high near 35. And for your Thursday, mostly sunny with a high near 30.
Stephen, Mike Quick, Zach Martin with us have been here with us before, though pre-pardon. So things obviously have changed a bit in the landscape. And all right, so let's talk about the trial. So you all were tried together. You weren't allowed to have separate trials.
Yeah, correct.
Which, yeah, that seems very unusual and not right at all. So what was the outcome there?
Well, it's funny. We got same trial. We all had to do the same trial, but we all got different sentences. I mean, I guess Steve and Mike kind of got the same, and I basically just got a year longer of probation.
Same as Carrie.
Yeah.
Were you facing, I guess, probably anything the judge wanted, like in terms of prison time?
Absolutely.
She didn't want prison time for us, the judge. She said probation does more than prison. She thinks it does a lot more.
In terms of punishment, or
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
I feel like we were lucky though to be one of the first,
okay,
Yeah, we were the
people,
top
because-
200.
Yeah,
think
so
arrested.
I think as it went on, sentencing got worse for a lot of the JSXers. So
did the judge say why she felt parole was a greater punishment?
She just thought it would do more mentally for us.
Did it have
That's what it seemed. I mean,
okay? Did it have an impact on? 'Cause one of the things that you hear stories, people that they lose their jobs, they have a hard time finding another job because of this following them around. Did any of that impact any of you?
me and Mike are self-employed.
Okay.
yeah, probably helped
So-
your business.
Well, I was
actually,
gonna
didn't
Yeah.
yeah, it could possibly.
Yeah, it has helped. But we haven't advertised,
Right.
For me, it wasn't really. It didn't. I mean, I wasn't employed, and I was just, which that also was really frustrating for the probation for the federal government. They didn't like that I haven't been paying taxes because I haven't had income, and they were just kind of upset with that. My mom had recently passed away not too long before all this, and so she left me a little bit of kickback money, and so I was kind of just living off that.
Okay.
And then yeah, went and did this, and man, they did not like my PO. One of your main things is you have to have a 40-hour a week job, and they want to see your tax records and all that, and I'm like, well, I have neither of those.
Right.
And they were just, but I guess DC didn't pursue me too much. So
Now, I hadn't really thought about it, but you all, I mean, none of this was secret. Your names are out there. There's stories. And so I imagine that came with a degree of attention, both positive and negative.
Yes. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
So what was that? Explain that if you would.
I still haven't got my head around it, to be honest.
Mm.
It's a pretty unusual experience because you're either really liked or you're really not
Right.
liked, And I mean, let's face it, we walked down a hall. We spent 10 minutes in a building that we paid for,
Yeah.
Walked in, stood around, looked around, walked out. And I mean, local comments you would see from news stories, they should be hanging dead from a tree
Right.
and stuff like that. And it's just asinine.
Yeah, we took the shortest tour ever of the U.S.
Right.
Capitol. Didn't even see violence. So that being said, what was it that you were found guilty of?
But there were 4 charges. You guys, what was it?
Yeah,
Parading and demonstrating on Capitol grounds is what we ended up pleading to. There were 3 other charges. I don't even remember what they were at this
being
time.
at the wrong place at the wrong time.
Yeah,
basically.
basically.
Yeah. Well, and I've talked extensively about this. To me, the injustice isn't simply going after people that should not have been sought out to the degree they were, but the different level of punishment. That's why, to me, it is political, that you've had numerous occasions of people parading through the Capitol, whether it's the Kavanaugh hearings or
Yeah.
it's not uncommon. People will stand up and start yelling during Senate hearings and they get escorted out. These individuals never get treated this way.
I
They
think
don't
it
get
happened
treated.
6 times last year.
Yeah, I mean, it's well, and after October 7th, you had a sit-in occur,
Yep,
and
yep.
these aren't people who face prison time. These aren't people that get put on parole and have parole officers. They get, if anything, a fine, and to me, that's where I have a difficult time comprehending that people don't see the injustice here.
And
Yeah.
then you had politicians bailing out the BLM and
Yeah.
Antifa rioters in 2020.
Yeah.
And if we
what-
wanted, if we wanted to set up a GoFundMe account, they would take it away.
Yeah, any J6er that raised money, they were just fined that by the judge. So if you raise $60,000 for your legal fees, they fine you $61,000.
All right, then Trump announces he's running for re-election, which I don't think was a huge surprise. What did you all, do you think, oh, he has a chance, he doesn't, then there's the assassination, there's so many different, it was just such a crazy election cycle. The Democrats overthrowing the election in 50 states of Biden's win, and then
Right.
trying to have Trump thrown off the ballot. In some states, they did successfully throw off RFK Jr. Some, they forced him to stay on the ballot. Jill Green, they threw off on some ballots. Cornel West. I mean, for the political party that talks so much about democracy, they went around and rigged every election they possibly could. And so with that and the lawfare against Trump, the attempt to put him in prison, at some point it almost seemed insurmountable. There's no way that he's going to be able to evade, as corrupt as these people are. You think there's no way that they're not going to just get something, or some excuse to throw him in prison or whatever. Yet here we are today. So through that entire election, just as a citizen, it was chaotic. But for individuals convicted of parading in the Capitol on January 6th, what were your thoughts during that whole time?
Mine was probably the same as most people, your average citizen, only you got to amplify it by 5 or 10 because we had a lot riding on it. The pardon is great, but honestly, to me personally, the 2020 election needs to be rectified. I still believe there's still many answers
Right.
that haven't been, many questions I've got that haven't been answered. They've been swept under the rug. We had an interview with the J6 committee, and I would ask them, okay, what about in Georgia where the ladies pulling the ballots from under the table and rerunning them, and they would go with your state media answer and just
Right.
they would just sidestep it. I had many questions, more votes coming in than registered voters in Wisconsin, I believe it was. The kicking out of the bipartisan election
Right.
observers in multiple states. What was it in Pennsylvania? The judges actually changed the laws where that's up to the legislators, not the judges. I mean, it shouldn't have ever even went through. So going into 2024, I know that Trump was the more popular candidate. I mean, the majority of people in the country, as you've seen the maps, the red maps, I mean, are behind him. But it's what shenanigans are going to happen to derail this.
Right. This last time around, and it doesn't sound like it was an accident, there was a lot less accusations of widespread fraud, and there were post-election a couple of interviews with people in the Trump world that noted that's because we were ahead of the curve on this one. We were catching, I think this was ironically the upside of all of the early voting.
Right.
Is they were catching it before election day, because once it happens on election day and then, well, it's too late, we've already counted them. And so I think that actually helped perhaps diminish some of the fraud in having that early
Yeah,
voting.
I think it did.
Well,
Definitely.
the moment I knew that Trump was going to win was when I learned the details of the assassination attempt and what the odds are of him surviving that.
Mhm.
I knew then at that moment that,
Just because it was like meant to be.
yeah, it's God stepped in on that one. There's no other explanation. I mean, the odds are ridiculous for him to turn his head like that at that moment.
And how much interest the media has had in three fellas like you, but then juxtaposed to the little interest they have in the individual that actually shot Trump.
Yeah.
That's pretty remarkable.
That's why I like to call them the state media now. It's most people
Yeah.
think that's only other countries, but I beg to differ.
It just woke people up, though. Everything they do or don't do is just waking people up, like, just crazy.
Have you all had conversations with anyone that, as you noted, they succumbed to the media's disinformation about what you all did, and then actually listened to you? And like, I had no idea that that's what was going on. I thought it was just all a bunch of insurrectionists that marched from that speech over there and overtook the Capitol, trying to overthrow the government, and then realizing that wasn't at all what was going on.
Yeah, most people don't even realize there was pipe bombers, 2 pipe bombs
Right?
that day. They don't even have a clue.
I haven't had anybody. I haven't had anybody come back and say,
Sorry.
"You were right."
Yeah, no. Most people have their mind made up, and I
Yeah.
can't even get through my story, to the people who have
that-
already made their mind up against it. I can't even get halfway through it. I can say, look, I've got pictures on my phone, and nope, I don't want to hear it. I
Yeah,
don't want to hear your
people
opinion.
don't like to admit they're wrong.
I just want to say, I told you so.
Yeah.
Going to take a quick break. Traffic update more ahead. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. Stephen Mike Quick, Zach Martin, given parole, found guilty for parading in the Capitol January 6th, and then received the pardon from Trump. Did you? That was something obviously that was on the radar. That was talked about. Of course, there was an obsession by the media over this. I would be interested to get your thoughts on the claim that what Trump is really doing is creating his own private army of people like you, so that he can do, I don't know, something horrible. But
That sounds like a conspiracy.
yeah, Blue Anon. Did you think it would happen? What was it like when you how did you find out that you got pardons?
Well, I was watching Trump
Mm-hmm.
the night he was
Okay.
signing all his executive orders.
With Will Scharf.
I was overseas, so I got a message when it happened.
Yeah, no
Yeah,
kidding.
So that was nice, though. Nice message to have. I didn't sleep very good for 2 or 3 days of that. I was pretty excited, because I couldn't plug in to see what was going on so much.
What a whirlwind the whole thing, though. Something where you were talking about the whole reason you went up there is because that election, was it that election you went to vote and they told, somebody already voted?
No, it was 2016.
2016?
Yeah.
So you went to vote and they're like, oh, somebody already voted in your name?
Yeah. I went to go vote. They said I had already voted. And I was like, well, I haven't voted,
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, well, who do I vote for? Can you tell me that?
Yeah. Yeah. Gee, I wonder.
So they said I had to go to City Hall, and
Yeah.
I got to vote.
Right. Do the.
But that's what opened my eyes to the
Mhm.
2020, because it was
You
great.
experienced it.
Yeah.
And something that you probably note this as well. They go, oh, insurrection, and
You know, they don't use that word anymore.
yeah, it's been a bit. But I always like to, if all of that were, why is it that the Biden administration did not charge anyone with actual insurrection?
Exactly.
That is an actual federal crime, yet not a single. That was part of. In fact, the only court-style scenario that ever addressed it was the Senate during the impeachment, and they found Trump not guilty of it.
Yeah.
That was the closest thing they ever came to having any sort of actual official insurrection charges, and the Democrat-led Senate found him not guilty.
Yeah, and then the J6 Commission, whatever they found, they destroyed because it went against what they, allegedly, it went against what they
Yeah.
were thinking was going on.
Someone texted in asking if any of you have been asked to do interviews with local news media, and if so, have you
I have, and
been asked or did? Mhm.
and it's like typical.
Yeah.
They like to cut things out.
Now, several contacted our attorney while everything was still going on before we had actually gone through court. That process was still going on, but we weren't doing any interviews at that time.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you coming here and talking to everyone. Of course, we've known each other for a few years, but I think also this sort of venue, it allows for a lot of time and discussion, and even sitting down with a TV interview, even if they are unbiased individuals, you sit down and you talk to them for like an hour, and then it's 12 seconds of audio.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just impossible. I would think to really, I would find that to be very frustrating. I'd find that frustrating if I was a journalist. I don't think I'd be able to do it.
Yeah,
This is much
I get
easier. It's
asked
much better.
if I get angry and upset because people don't believe us. And it's like, what can I get angry and upset about?
Yeah.
If they don't know, they don't know. How can I be upset about that?
I imagine if you ever just, you're somewhere having lunch and you hear people talking about those J6ers, not knowing.
Yeah.
And have that happened?
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
I'd go up to him and be
I'm
like,
sure that, you
I was
strike me
there.
as the one of the three
Yeah.
of you that would have no problem
You got any
studying
questions? Because let me tell you. So, but yeah, it's definitely. I mean, that was. I think that was a question a little while back. I mean, like I get treated like a veteran sometimes. It's like I'll be wherever and I'll be talking to the owner of the restaurant or whatever, and he'll find out that I'm a J6er, and the next thing you know, he's like got taking pictures and all that stuff too. It's pretty wild, really. I mean, more positive, I think, than
Yeah, it's
negative.
definitely more positive than negative. The negatives are family and friends who
Yeah,
think you're this evil person.
Like your own family and friends?
Yes.
Yes.
No kidding.
yeah. We've all got a couple friends that they just.
Found out maybe they weren't really friends.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. We're enemies, I guess.
Well,
So-
it's such a mixed bag of perceptions, I guess. And I remember prior to the election, we played audio of MSNBC, and they had some undecided voters in Michigan or Minnesota, and that was when they were trying everything against Trump. And well, what about he's going to pardon all these people, the J6ers, and there were two guys in particular, and they were blue, and one of them was like, I don't even care about that, and another guy was like, yeah, I remember that happening. It seems like there were a bunch of people and some people got out of control, but that doesn't have anything to do with the way I'm voting. And so it is interesting that it seems like, at least, I don't know, you've got a lot of people that support. And I don't even know if it's so much that what you did, but what you've gone through, maybe it's probably a mixed bag there. But that there's a huge segment of the population, at least when it came to, do we want Trump as president or do we want, Kamala Harris, that Yeah, I think it's funny that something that they portrayed as worse than 9/11 was not enough to make them say, "I want Kamala Harris." Like that, that's gotta sting a little bit.
Yeah, who voted her in anyway?
Yeah,
Yeah.
democracy,
Right.
Yeah.
right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
That's right.
that's how it works.
Yeah.
Big donors. Uh, and how do you feel about how things are going so far with Trump?
I love it. I love it. Keep going, Trump.
Yeah.
Keep
Promises
going.
made, promises kept.
Yep.
That's the scariest thing for the bad guys is that they know he's probably going to stick to it, and
And
it's
he's transparent about it too. He's
yeah.
not sneaking off behind closed
Right.
doors doing
and he's
stuff.
more transparent this go around, and he has a better team. You know, the last go around it wasn't. It was there was some bad.
I I I imagine this is deliberate. Part of the fit that they're pitching is these Doge folks that are in their early 20s. And again, I would suspect it's deliberate because they don't owe anyone anything.
Correct.
You're finding, how do you find people that you've got this swamp and you recognize virtually everyone at some point that they've crossed paths or they've worked for this person, they know. But the brilliance of this
Right.
is that they have no care or attachments to what goes on in Washington. That is not, that's not relevant to them, and I think that that's great.
Yeah, yeah. Well, they don't have any loyalties to anybody
Yeah.
because they're not part of that town.
And they're probably a little bit cynical. And as I was reading a Federalist piece, the thing about the perspective of those individuals is that they see the antiquated people that are defending all of this. And these are people that aren't going to be alive in order to suffer the consequences of all this spending. They're the ones, as younger people, who are going to have to pay for it. And here they're getting trashed on because they are bringing light to it under orders of Trump.
Yeah, I can't make sense of it, honestly.
Yeah, it's
Corrupt.
Yeah, just evil. Yeah.
Final thoughts?
Let's go, Trump.
Let's go.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's on now.
Well, you're always welcome here, and what a journey it's been for you all. And it sucks when I guess you find out family and friends their perspective on things, but I guess you probably also learn a lot of positives about people maybe you didn't know as well.
Way more positive.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
that's
So,
definitely
Yeah.
Thanks for
The
having
friends
us.
like to encourage the family to name call us and all that. They jump right on
well,
board.
yeah, like you said, I guess
So,
find out who your friends really are.
Yeah.
Sticks and stones will break our bones.
Steve, Mike, Zach, it's great to see y'all. Thanks
Thank
for coming
you.
in and sharing this morning.
Yeah.
Springfield
Nick.
Talk 1041. I'm Nick Reed. I want a great homeloan.com. You got home loan needs. You have the Carrickers and their team, whether it is a refinancing situation, maybe it's your first time home and you're a little anxious about that process, or you've been through the process with sort of the big mega lender folks, and you know that you can just become a number that every time you need information, you call an 1-800 number, and then there's 80 different prompts, one including what language do you speak, and it's just not that local live customer service that you want. And reverse mortgages, something that maybe you've heard about, but you're not really, is it sketchy? What exactly is a reverse mortgage? It may be right for you. That's information that they can provide to you, and all you got to do is reach out to them with any information that you may be trying to gather to decide if it's the right time for you to refinance, to get a home loan, or to do that reverse mortgage. I want a great homeloan.com, because you do. Bradford Light, tailored for the hardworking men and women who appreciate reliable, easy drinking experience. A beer that speaks to the dedication of the hands that built the heartland out of Kansas, Washington, Kansas. Kansas Territory Brewing Company. You can find more about Bradford Light. Also available, Pineapple Life Coach. It's not too hoppy. This is what a lot of times pineapple beers, if you have one, it's got a lot of hop to it. I guess just the sweet and that sharpness, if you will, of the hops is such a good balance. But this doesn't, if you don't like the hoppiness, that's something that you may steer away from. I recommend you try Pineapple Life Coach. You can find either of those at Area Macadoodles or Price Cutters and learn more information over at KansasTerritoryBrewingCo.com. Well, those J6ing guys, they were scary, weren't they?
Ugh.
I mean, they just had domestic terrorists written all over
I
them.
thought there was going to be an insurrection
I
right
know.
here in the studio.
I felt it. I felt an insurrection about ready to happen. I was afraid at any moment as they paraded in here that they were just going to overthrow the radio station.
Yeah, it really scared me when they shook my hand and said, "Have a good day."
Clearly. Worse than the 9/11 hijackers.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, any
Yep.
reasonable person, and worse than the Holocaust. That's
And
another.
Pearl Harbor.
And Pearl Harbor. It's worse than a lot of things. Yeah, it is. It is crazy when you realize that so many of the people that were tracked down like animals by the Biden administration were individuals that they didn't even know that there was any violence going on until they were gone and saw it on the news. This is because, the media, every time they have a story, what do they show? They show these little pockets of violence. And they never explain that there were hundreds and hundreds of people in other areas. The Capitol's pretty big. You aren't aware of this. I mean, it's pretty good sized. So you can have somebody in one area of the Capitol doing something they shouldn't be doing, but then have other people that have no idea that's going on. I think there is a failure to recognize the size of the U.S. Capitol. And because of the media's disinformation campaign, they crafted this scenario in which they talk about all of the January 6ers while showing that violent footage. They talk about the pardoning of, the January 6ers while showing the footage of people acting out in violence, because they don't want you to envision people like Steve and Mike or Zach who just, wandered in for 10 minutes and well, there's not much going on here, and then left. And didn't even realize that there was any violence going on until they saw it on the news in the hotel room. And then to have the administration at the time turn family members and friends against you because of the disinformation campaign. That you get this grip, this mental and emotional grip the government got over certain people, that they would believe politicians with an agenda over their own family members. That's crazy. And to think that because you had just gone over there, as we've heard the story before. If you missed last hour, I recommend you go listen to the podcast, 3 of the individuals pardoned by Trump. And we've spoken with Steve and Mike and Zach in the past. They were individuals that hadn't even planned on going to the Capitol, but a friend of theirs went to use the restroom because the whatever parks department or whichever it was, they only put 7 porta potties outside Trump's speech. And so she had to go find a restroom somewhere, and then called them and say, "Hey, I'm over here." And so they went over to get her. And to equate that to the hijackers on 9/11? You hear accusations that Trump is the one who divides people and pits them against one another. I would argue when you hear instances in which family members ostracize other family members, when friends unfriend people that have been their friends, it isn't the Trump supporter that is deciding to sever ties. It's the other way around. That's pretty consistent. I'm not saying it doesn't happen the other way around, but pretty consistently, very loudly and very proudly, it's people who hate Trump that will cut their own family members off. If you're that devoted to a political party, you need to do some self-checking. Weather in a moment. Right now, the latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Color 10 Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair the Ozarks Home Improvements. A winter weather advisory is in effect for the entire listening area until noon on Wednesday. Today, a chance of snow and freezing drizzle throughout the day. Little accumulation is expected with a high near 34. Tonight, freezing rain and patchy fog with a low around 32. For your Wednesday, freezing rain, sleet, and snow are possible with a high near 35. And for your Thursday, mostly sunny with a high near 30. And the Pyramid Roofing Company, this is the perfect time of weather to realize, oh no, I need a roof repair. If you're in that situation where you're noticing yellowing on your ceiling or just drips or leaks, your gutters aren't keeping up properly, I highly recommend Josh and his team. Now, they offer free roof inspections for you, so you're not out anything whenever you have the Pyramid team out, and they do a very thorough roof inspection for you. They check everything from your gutters to your vents. They even get inside of your attic and do a deck check as well. And then they work through that process with you. Maybe you don't need a whole new roof, maybe just a simple roof repair. Either way, the Pyramid Roofing Company, they're going to shoot you straight, they're going to get you on the books, and they're going to get you all taken care of. So if it is time to have the Pyramid Roofing Company team out at your home, go ahead and give Josh and his team a call today. You can find all of that contact information for the Pyramid Roofing Company under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at ksgf.com.
Streaming live, ksgf.com. Disinformation campaign headline: Trump threatens to cancel ceasefire deal and let all hell break loose. We didn't threaten to cancel anything. What he noted is that while it's up to Israel, if it were him, and Hamas continues to not ultimately fulfill their end of the deal, thus breaking it by this slow dripping of hostages instead of just releasing them, that if it were up to him, he'd give them a deadline, a Saturday, and say all hell's going to break loose at that point. That's not Trump canceling anything. It's Trump recognizing that if Hamas doesn't abide by it, then why should Israel be tied up with it? This is a problem that the elite have had for some time, and Trump has recognized when you enter into an agreement with someone and they break the agreement's over. This is one of the reasons that a number of agreements during 2016 were agreements that the Trump administration pulled us out of because other parties weren't abiding by it in the first place. It was his approach when it came to NATO and how our NATO allies were not fulfilling their agreement to give the amount that was required as part of that agreement financially to sustain NATO. And his position is, if you guys aren't going to do it, why should we? This insistence that the United States is the one that has to enter into agreements and then follow through on our end when the other end doesn't, or expect our allies to do the same. That's not how you succeed. It's not how you get things done. So far, as much of the hand-wringing as has been done, it hasn't had the negative impact the media is hoping. Trump has a positive approval rating amid energetic opening weeks, seen as doing what he promised. Well, that's a novel idea, isn't it? They gave top answers. This is a CBS YouGov poll. Described Donald Trump. 69% said tough. 63% said energetic, 60% said focused, 58% said effective. You put that up against what people would say about Joe Biden? Certainly not tough, energetic, focused, or effective. It's also particularly humorous to evaluate that as the perception of the American people when the media, after Kamala Harris was given the nomination without anyone voting for her, then they tried to use the Donald Trump is too well. He's clearly losing it. I mean, he's too old. He's too old. Focused, energetic, effective. These are the top terms people use to describe Donald Trump. Trump and campaign promises. Is he doing it? 70% of Americans say, yep. That means even a significant number of Democrats are acknowledging this guy is doing what he was elected to do. Trump's overall approval rating, 53%. The administration's program to deport immigrants that are in the country illegally, 59%. Sending U.S. troops to the U.S.-Mexico border, 64%. These are all things that the Democrats and the media are screaming about, are complaining about. Yet it's exactly what the American people want. This is the frustration that some in the Democrat Party are dealing with right now. And that is the refusal to listen to the American people. The problem is, however, what the American people want right now is what Donald Trump is serving. There are a number of Democrats that, again, frustrated, and they will take to the Sunday morning talk shows and say what we need to do, and some of the strategists. We need to have town hall meetings and listen to what Americans want. They voted with what they wanted. The problem is it's not what you want. There was a point in time in which Democrats could credibly, somewhat, claim that their goals were the same as the Republicans, that it was, a great economy and secure borders and that we're going to cut wasteful spending. The problem is that over the past, I don't know exactly when one would pinpoint it. I would argue sometime definitely during the first Trump administration, they began defining themselves as the opposite of anything and everything Republicans in terms of outcome. They may now claim that they didn't support an open border, but Joe Biden, in that 2016 debate, openly said that's what he was for. He said, if I get elected president, all of you turned away at the border by Donald Trump, come back to the United States. They just, in defiance, whatever Republicans have said, therefore, the gender transitions for minors and forcing girls to compete against boys is another one of these issues in which the Republicans have 70 to 80% support, yet Democrats still, the ones that are screaming the loudest, the ones that are being put in charge of the DNC. And you have left-wingers that are from the inside doing what they can to sabotage the administration. We're going to take a break, play some audio from border czar Homan regarding what increasingly looks like, whether it's one or numerous corrupt individuals from within the FBI that are aiding and abetting some of the worst criminals, including gang members in this country, helping them evade capture. This is something that requires prison time of these individuals if they do get caught and if they're found guilty by a jury of their peers. Kristi Noem has commented on this, and again, so has Tom Homan. He was on with Sean Hannity last night. Play his audio coming up as well. I'm Nick Reed. Kristi Noem suggesting corrupt FBI agents leaked ICE raid details to corporate media outlets. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem yesterday, or rather Sunday, appearing to blame the FBI for leaking plans of a sweeping immigration raid in the L.A. area. The Los Angeles Times obtained an internal government document detailing plans on a proposed large-scale immigration and custom enforcement raid in the Los Angeles area by the end of February. In reaction to the news, Noem suggested corrupt FBI agents were behind the leak and declared that she would work to the fullest extent to prosecute those responsible. And that's what needs to happen. We cannot live in a country where people go to prison for years because they walked into the Capitol without any act of violence, but then you are supposed to be an agent sworn to uphold the law in the United States of America, and instead you're tipping off gang leaders so that they can evade deportation. The Homeland Security Secretary posted on X, quote, "The FBI is so corrupt. We will work with any and every agency to stop leaks and prosecute those crooked deep state agents to the full extent of the law." The FBI declined a request for comment from the Daily Caller News Foundation. The operation in Los Angeles was expected to be executed in coordination with the Drug Enforcement Administration's local offices and the FBI, according to a source that spoke with the LA Times. FBI agents were reportedly being ordered to participate in the planned raids in order to help provide more bodies for the operation. Of course, LA is a sanctuary city that largely restricts local law enforcement from helping or cooperating with deportation officers, making it more difficult for ICE to locate and apprehend criminal illegal migrants, including those that have been convicted of rape and drug trafficking and child molestation. There was comment also from border czar Tom Homan. This was last night, Sean Hannity, asking him about the leaks.
Things come from inside, and we know the first leak of Aurora is under current investigation. We think we identified that person under investigation right now. The California leak, Secretary Noem, she's correct. Some of the information we're receiving tends to lead toward the FBI. But I talked to the Deputy Attorney General all this weekend. They've opened up a criminal investigation. And they have promised that not only this person lose their job and lose their pension, they're going to go to jail. They're going to criminally prosecute. So we're all over it. We got the DHS IG investigating the first one. Have a pretty good idea what happened. Can't share a lot because it's under investigation, but the IG's opened up a criminal investigation on the second one. We're sending a strong message. It's just not, giving the bad guys a heads up so they can escape apprehension. Right? We're arresting, giving the Venezuela gang a heads up so we can't arrest them. You're putting officers' lives at risk. It's only a matter of time if we walk into a place where there's going to be a bad guy doesn't care. He's going to be sitting and wait for the officers to show up and ambush him. This is not a game. So DHS and DOJ are connected at hip to hold these people responsible in a criminal fashion.
So early indications are this is coming from our own FBI. How certain are you of that?
Information leading to that. Again, I'll let the Department of Justice do their own investigation. But again, I talked to the Deputy Attorney General this week, and they've opened up a criminal investigation. He thinks the information is coming from there also, so we'll let that investigation play out. But some of the leads point that way.
Some of these individuals that work within, if you want to call it the deep state, these corrupt individuals that have become part of the culture of the DOJ and the FBI, I believe that they have so long felt protected that they still have some sense that I can't be caught, or if I am, what are they going to do? I do not believe that should this be something that has come from internally, the FBI tipping off these people, or tipping them off by way of leaking it to the media, because they know full well that all they have to do is tell the media, and the media is then going to broadcast it so that all of these gang members and others that are being sought out will have a heads up that they're coming. And, if you have it leaked out in that fashion, Lord knows to whom else it's been leaked out. These individuals have for so long, for political purposes, been able to leak information in an effort to push their own personal political agendas. I think that they still have a sense of invincibility, that nothing can be done to them. I do believe that in some capacity, one or more of those executive orders is designating some of these different cartels as terrorist organizations. It is not beyond the stretch of imagination, given that we know for a fact some of these individuals have, they've got cells throughout different areas of the country. They are set up in cities, and they are drawn towards sanctuary cities like Los Angeles. And so what we are getting into here is a scenario in which allegedly at least somebody and again, according to Nome, it appears as if, as they hone in on this, it's somebody or somebodies in the FBI that is revealing information in order to help what has been potentially designated as terrorist organizations evade deportation. And the potential consequences of this, when you look just at whether it's that or giving the Taliban their own country, their own military, and billions of U.S. dollars, fighting to give Hamas, a terrorist organization, their own country, the Biden administration taking the Houthis off the terror list, the opening up the financial spigots of cash to Iran so that they could fund October 7th. And then you read stories about people within the quote-unquote deep state that are releasing and leaking information in order to give a heads up to what could very well be now designated as terrorist, these drug cartels. It really begins to come into focus the reality that there has been no greater funding friend of terrorism than the United States has been. And now, of course, we learn the billions and billions of dollars just through USAID that has secretly been funneled to these different terrorist organizations. Our dollars. If the United States of America had not been, for we don't know how long, giving moral support to terrorist organizations and giving financial support to terrorist organizations, you wonder what this world would look like? How much of the current atmosphere of terrorism exists today exists because the United States in one form or another has been supporting it? Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed.
Springfield's Talk 1041, your first alert forecast from Color 10, Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals. A winter weather advisory is in effect for the entire listening area until noon on Wednesday. Today, we'll see a chance of snow and freezing drizzle throughout the day. Little accumulation is to be expected, though. We'll see a high near 34. Tonight, freezing rain and patchy fog with a low around 32. For your Wednesday, freezing rain, sleet, and snow are possible with a high near 35. And for your Thursday, mostly sunny with a high near 30.
KSGF.com, you can get registered to win tickets to the Outlaw Music Festival that, among others, Willie Nelson, Bob Dylan, Nathaniel Rateliff. Also over at KSGF.com, just Bob Dylan by himself. It's 2 opportunities to see Bob Dylan with that Thunder Ridge concert, that performance coming up later this summer. With Willie Nelson, or by himself at the Rough and Rowdy Ways Tour at Juanita K. That will be March 28th. Registration is open now at ksgf.com. The Department of Homeland Security telling Fox News that 4 employees are being fired today for circumventing leadership and unilaterally making the egregious payments for hotels for migrants in New York City. The firings come after Musk wrote on X that the, quote, Doge team just discovered that FEMA sent $59 million just last week to luxury hotels in New York City to house illegal immigrants. They should also have to pay that money back. Those 4 individuals that were responsible for that should have to pay that money back. Well, now, they'll never be able to do that. And that could very well be true. But that really wouldn't be the point, would it? The point would be to let anyone else know who thinks about disobeying what it is that their employer has told them to do to the tune of $59 million, that their financial future will be tethered to owing that money back. The repercussions for this behavior needs to be the type of repercussion that makes a person who is thinking about going rogue decide that it certainly is not worth it. Part of why we see so much defiance and refusal to do what it is that their employers tell them to do is because of, again, the protection atmosphere that they feel, this sense of security in which they know that this has been going on for a very long time, that the corruption is the norm. It is not the exception. It is the total norm. And nobody ever gets fired for it. And there's just still this instinct that, well, that person may have over there, this person may have over there, but they're not going to come after me. I can just go ahead and approve this payment. By the way, these would be unelected people that approved the $59 million. So for all the concern that the left has about Elon Musk exposing this as an unelected individual, the 4 people that approved the $59 million were unelected. I don't know about you, but if there are unelected people doing the job that they have been tasked with doing by the President of the United States, I'd much rather those unelected people be showing us where this waste is, be telling us where this money is going, as opposed to the ones hitting the send button or signing the checks with my name on it and your name on it. It's people being held accountable in government is not something that we are accustomed to. And it certainly isn't something that the people in government have been accustomed to. Now, in some winning, Venezuela planning on sending planes to the U.S. for deportation flights, returning to the country with nearly 200 deportees. 2 planes sent by Venezuela returned home yesterday with nearly 2,000 of the illegals who were here in the United States illegally. The 190 migrants returned to Venezuela signals a possible ease in tensions between the 2 longtime adversaries and a win for the Trump administration as it seeks to have countries take back their citizens found in the U.S. without authorization. The Conviasa airline flights arrived in the Venezuelan capital of Caracas from Fort Bliss, a U.S. Army base in El Paso. Trump envoy Richard Grenell, who oversaw the deportation, wrote, quote, 2 planes of illegal immigrants left El Paso today, headed to Venezuela, paid for by the Venezuelans. That's called winning. One of the other nuggets of enjoyment in watching this is the media leading up to the election portrayed somewhat of a schizophrenic approach when it came to covering the deportation of people in this country illegally. On one hand, what they kind of wanted to frighten people and paint it as being racist. But on the other hand, they would talk about how it wasn't even possible, that the logistics of all of this were something that no reasonable person could ever expect to take place. And while there obviously is, we just the tiny, tiny tip of the iceberg at this point. You've got Trump within a few weeks having the countries from which these people came illegally, those countries sending the planes on their own dime in order to ship their people back to their own country. And it's just delicious to watch that, given this portrayal prior to the election that Trump supporters shouldn't get too invested in believing that Trump is going to be successful in these deportations, because just logistically, there's just no way that this can be pulled off. Donald Trump was asked a question by somebody on Air Force One from the Huffington Post, and it's making the rounds a bit because of his somewhat humorous roast. You'll hear it. There's background noise from the plane. The question isn't as important from the Huffington Post as Trump's response.
I don't know even what you're talking about. Neither do you. Who are you with? Who? I'm the one. I thought they died. Are they still around? I haven't read them in years. I thought they died. All right, go ahead. Who else?
Oh, the Huffington Post, and then his face. Oh,
You guys are
you
still
guys.
up there?
Oh, Huffington Post. Oh. Want to play also some audio from Marco Rubio. He's thus far proven to be straight up in line with what we would expect from the Trump administration. Not that that necessarily is a surprise, but it's amazing how just sharply Trump learned from his first 4 years. And all of those picks that he had from, the first administration that would be cumbersome, they would not be good ambassadors of messaging, they weren't always the most articulate individuals, and oftentimes they would get in there and do everything they could to sabotage his administration. How he could go from that. I'm sorry, you cannot say this guy is not sharp. I'm just even talking intellectually. The 180-degree difference in presentation, in attitude, and in being on the same page as Donald Trump that we have seen from these appointments thus far compared to the first administration, it is absolute night and day. I've never seen an example of someone demonstrating that they have learned from the errors of their way the first time around, as Trump has demonstrated. And he acknowledged this just a couple of weeks before the election when asked during an interview what he felt his biggest mistake was, or what he would do differently than the first term. And he said, the people I chose. I learned a lot. And I'm not going to make that mistake again. And we are seeing that on a daily basis. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. There was a point in time in which neither political party really defended wasteful spending, just it as a whole. You get politicians, they campaign on, well, yeah, we need to cut wasteful spending. What Democrats have backed themselves into a corner here is full-blown defending some of the most not just wasteful spending, but spending that is against the national security interests of the United States of America, and that is funding of terrorism. I mean, they're defending this stuff. I'd love for one of these media outlets, when they are interviewing any Democrat that is defending every bit of spending, to ask them, can you identify anything that you agree would be a poor use of taxpayer dollars that should be eliminated? Just one thing. If I'm out there defending a form of spending, I'm certainly going to point to examples of spending that I would believe or argue should be what we're focusing on. Just so that you see that, oh, I'm not against I'm not for wasting taxpayer dollars or spending taxpayer dollars on terrorist organizations. No, I'm against that. This is the sort of cut, however, that I support over here. But they're never asked to identify what they do support in cutting. It's almost like the abortion issue. They will claim that they're not for abortion up until birth. But then when you ask them, well, then when do you support the cutoff? When should it be illegal? And they don't have an answer. Oh, sure, we're against wasteful spending. Okay, well, tell us what spending is occurring currently that you are opposed to, that you would support cutting. And just like the abortion issue, they don't have an answer for that. What they try to do is make it sound like the world is going to collapse. All of these horrible things are going to happen because every single one of these dollars that's being spent, most of which has been in secret with no transparency until now, is absolutely vital to the national interest of not just the United States, but the global interest of the world. Marco Rubio on, which XM channel was this? The David Webb Show, talking about those claims.
Things like, are people going to starve to death? Are we going to have a famine? Is it going to destabilize a country in a way that would be negative to our national interest and open the door for radical jihadists or others to take advantage? We're going to continue to do those. But the problem is that the definition of humanitarian has expanded beyond that, to all kinds of other things that do not make sense. That doesn't mean they're bad ideas. Someone should do it. It just shouldn't be the American taxpayer. So that's the kind of thing that we're going through right now and identifying. And by the way, we issued a waiver which allowed all these life-saving programs to continue. And obviously, there's anytime you have a pause, there's some hiccups about how to restart the payment programs, but all that's going to get taken care of here very quickly. And those programs will continue. We're not walking away from foreign aid. We are walking away from foreign aid that's dumb, that's stupid, that wastes American taxpayer money. We're just not going to continue to do those.
And that is, once again, a demonstration that Donald Trump has managed to pick people to run these different divisions of the government. Marco Rubio there, Secretary of State, that have messaging on point, unwavering, unapologetically. We're not talking about cutting off foreign aid. We're talking about cutting off foreign aid that is stupid and dumb. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty. If you thinking about selling your home, but you don't know if it's the right time, reach out to her. It's understandable with the massive amounts of realtors that are out there. We've talked with Emily about this in the past, that some of them, it's just about numbers. They don't want to waste their time unless they think that you're going to utilize them to help find that new home so they can get their commission. That's not how Emily works. If you have any questions, again, maybe you're looking to sell your home and you wonder how much it's worth. You wonder, do we need to replace all the cabinets? Or do we have to update that HVAC unit? There are a lot of things that you may believe that you have to fix, and maybe you don't have to. Or things that you believe that, well, we'll upgrade it and then we can get more out of our house, where it's actually something that's just expected. You're not necessarily going to get more out of your house, but, in order for the purchase to occur, they want this fixed. This is where she's going to help guide you through that so you don't make any unnecessary expenditures when it comes to upgrading your home on things that aren't going to make a difference one way or another. So reach out to her, use her knowledge, and I think you'll find that you'll be glad you did. I know that all the people that I know who have utilized her have recommended her, and I recommend her as well. Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty. Now, we played Marco Rubio's audio as the Secretary of State noting that we aren't cutting off foreign aid. We're cutting off foreign aid that is dumb and that is stupid. And essentially, there has been a division created. The Trump side is that we spend way too much of the taxpayer dollars, and we do way too much of it secretly. And so we need to expose all of that information so that the taxpayers know. Then you have the side that says the taxpayers should not know. This is something that needs to continue. And while they would argue that's not the position, they have yet to articulate any sort of spending that they actually are opposed to. And they have gotten themselves in such a, well, Trump is on this side, so we're on this side situation, that even when it comes to Sesame Street in Iraq, they are arguing that that is something you should go to work daily to pay for.
Is funding Sesame Street a judicious use of soft power?
Well, Michael, the way you put it is the way I hope folks considering your poll today will think about it. This isn't just funding a kid show for children, millions of children in countries like Iraq. It's a show that helps teach values, helps teach public health, helps prevent kids from dying from dysentery and disease, and helps push values like collaboration, peacefulness, cooperation in a society where the alternative is ISIS, extremism, and terrorism. And to your point, it's pennies on the dollar. The U.S. Department of Defense has an annual budget of about $850 billion. USAID was spending about $30 billion. It is a small proportion of our total federal spending. And as Joe and I would often say, it's not just soft power, it's smart power.
Now, a couple of things here. One, most people that understand how it is that a person or a corporation get themselves in line economically is to work within a budget, and to not have that attitude, oh, well, it's just a little bit. It's just coffee once a day at Starbucks. Oh, it's just a little this. It's just a little that. Well, before long, those little bits of this and that add up. It's that attitude that largely helps contribute to this out-of-control spending, because everything that comes along, well, compared to how much trouble we're in financially, it hardly means anything at all. That's not a wise economic approach. But if we've gotten to the point where we have people in government that are telling us that in order to make world peace, we have to spend money on Sesame Street in countries like Iraq, let's not forget, many of these are the same people who defended Joe Biden's opening up the money to fund the number one terrorism exporter in the world, and that's Iran. Glenn Beck's coming up next. I'm Nick Reed.